Hello, everyone. Welcome to our live show with our guest from this week, Julie Marvin. Hey, Julie, how's it going?
It's good. Hello.
I'm trying to get this question to pop up. Oh, there we go. I think it did. Cool. So I just wanted to, I always like to put a face to the name after the episode launches each week. So now you can officially meet Julie and just chat a little bit about the episode. So how do you feel, Julie, about the podcast? Have you gotten some good feedback?
My mom liked it a lot.
Well, she should. It was a good episode.
Well, thanks. I
That's good.
listened to it. I didn't sound as bad as I was worried that I would sound. So
Nobody
you
ever
get to
sounds as
listen
bad
to
as they're afraid.
your own voice. It's
Oh,
not
girl. I've kind of had to get used to it, but yeah, I'm with you. So you feel good about everything you said? You're still hanging with your
so.
thoughts?
Yeah, I'm good. I
That's
stand by it.
awesome. So just for everyone who maybe hasn't listened yet, we can go ahead and give a little bit of a preview for the episode. And for those of you who have, why don't you go ahead and tell us again, just what is occupational therapy and how can it help kids from hard places?
Well, overall, in general, occupational therapy is anything that helps you function in your day-to-day life. So for a child, a lot of times it's play, going through all of those developmental milestones that all kids have to go through to be successful. It can be schoolwork. It can be writing. It can be so many different things. But one thing that a kid has to be able to do to function in their day-to-day life is to stay at a level of arousal where learning and play can happen. So if they're like very overstimulated and can't pay attention to anything and can't sit still, then they can't learn and they can't be successful, especially like in a school setting. So a lot of times that's what we're working on with kids from difficult backgrounds, just getting them to a place where they can function in their home and in their school settings. And a lot of times a lot of this focuses on some sensory issues that have not developed properly in their early years of their life. So
Yeah. Well, for sure. And so what is the biggest similarity you see among when you treat kids from hard places? What's the biggest similarity you see among them?
Just they have usually developed some coping mechanisms in their life that make it a lot more difficult for them to function in the classroom or in the home.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, it'd be great to give some examples. So you can totally use my son Rock since you know him pretty well, and maybe your daughter Gracie, because I know that Gracie was adopted internationally and Rock was adopted through the foster care system after he had some trauma. So what are some of the things you see with them with coping mechanisms?
With Rock, definitely I see a low frustration tolerance at times.
Amen.
He gets very frustrated very quickly, which can escalate into, a tantrum or a fit or throwing something or, so we have to give him the tools to become less frustrated and for it to take more to make him frustrated. And I definitely have seen growth in that area over the past year. We have our ups and downs, of course, but overall, he's learning to to sit and attend for longer periods of time before he like expects some sort of a return. So a lot of times, what I start out with, we find something that motivates them, that they like, and we motivate them very quickly. We give them what they want. They do a little work, they get a little motivator. And over time, we decrease the,
you have a guest.
The time, yeah.
Hi.
Say hello.
Hello.
Speaking of which, okay, so do you want to introduce us to her?
Gracie, you want to say hi to everybody?
Hi.
Say hello.
So I should have led with that. I mean, I think that that's definitely in the all the descriptions of the posts that we've had today about Julie. But not only is Julie an occupational therapist and she works with lots of kids from hard places, but she is an adoptive mama, so she can definitely speak on all the issues that we see as adoptive moms. And so, yeah, that's your little girl, Gracie. So you've talked about Rock a little bit. What were some of her coping mechanisms that you saw?
Well, we talked in the podcast about how her major issue that we saw after she came home was sleep. She struggled with sleep. She got scared at nighttime, and so we had to make a decision as parents, like, do we go old school and force her to sleep in her own bed, and or do we, shoulder in and go in a different way? And so, we decided, and if you listen to the podcast, I kind of laugh at myself because I would have never thought that I would have had a, 5-6-year-old kid sleeping in my bed. But it was one of those things where we just felt like we didn't want her to be so stressed out, and we wanted her to get good rest. And, we wanted to get good rest too. And so, so anyway, and it all worked itself out. So I think that you should like never go into something thinking you'll never do something.
Right. Well, Well, and I guess I think that as far as traditional parenting goes, as adoptive moms, we know that almost never is our story, traditional parenting. But as an occupational therapist in general, I'm sure you get a lot of pushback from parents that are like, oh, he just needs a good old spanking or something. And you're having to say that's not going to work with him because of X, Y, and Z, or, whatever. Mm-hmm. Do you see a lot of pushback there, or do you have to educate these, people on what their child is going through and what's actually going to work?
Well, I mean, I feel like in the past several years, before you adopt a child, you have to go through some pretty intensive training.
Right.
The whole attachment bonding, I've learned so much about that, especially since I've adopted my child. And probably, 10 years ago as an occupational therapist, an adoptive family would have come in and talked to me about the issues, and I would have been like, just put them in their bed. Like, they're the kid, you're the parent, and all that stuff. But learning about the trauma and the lack of bonding and attachment that these kids go through and what that does to them has really opened my eyes. So I think it is really something I needed to really learn about. And I'm really glad that I now understand more and can empathize with parents more than I once would have. So if I talked to you 10 years ago and messed stuff up, I'm sorry.
I find that hard to believe. So I mean, we've kind of already touched on this a little bit, and that was my next question, was how has your own adoption story shaped the way you see your patients now? And would you say that's it? Just seeing kind of the touch and go parenting as more of a value now?
Yeah. I mean, definitely. And I've said this before to people I know, like, you know how to raise kids before you have kids so much. You think you know
Yeah.
everything. And
Yeah.
like I'm a much better therapist now that I've had kids, and I'm an even better therapist, I think, now that I've had biological kids and have adopted a child. Just because you get that empathy for people and you see what you went through, what they went through, and you went through a lot of training that you hadn't gone through before, delving into the deeper issues and the hard stuff. And so anyway, I'm hoping that I can really service families well that have um, gone through this. And I mean, those kids deserve the world. They deserve everything. They deserve more um, grace, and we want them to be successful. They deserve that.
Absolutely. So if you could, and we'll wrap up here, but if you could just sum it all up into like one thing to encourage mamas within the adoption, or I'm sorry, within the adoption world, but also within the occupational therapy world, like what would, through that lens, what would the encouragement be?
Um, I think just the same kind of thing that I said at the end of the podcast is um, don't be afraid to get the help your kid needs. Don't be embarrassed by some of the behaviors your kids might demonstrate. That your kids have been through a lot, and we want to help them. Give yourself a lot of grace through this because it's hard, and you're going to feel like you didn't do a good job a lot of days.
Yeah.
But you have done a good job because you have um, you're walking alongside these kids who have been through so much, and you're doing the best you can to get them what they need. And I mean, if you can just at the end of the day wrap your arms around these babies and love them, you've had a good day. You've done a good job.
Yeah, that feels good to hear. Absolutely, because I think that we're so hard on ourselves. Um, well, yeah. So thank you so much, Julie, for jumping on here and introducing yourself via video. And I wanted to remind listeners that if you haven't listened to Julie's episode, you can go and listen to that now on the website, theadoptivemompodcast.com, or on iTunes or Stitcher or your favorite podcast app. I also wanted to let you guys know we are officially on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel, and you can listen to the episodes there. You'll also catch shows like this, my weekly live show with my guests for that week, and our Thursday shows. And that's a new thing. We've had 2 weeks of that so far, and we're going to have another episode Thursday. It'll be every week, and you can catch those here on Facebook and afterwards on YouTube. So give it a listen. And thank you so much again, Julie. If people have comments after, if you're not watching this live, you can still comment and ask questions, and Julie and I will be monitoring those, and we can chat with you there. So thanks again. Have a good night.
Bye.